Let's begin right away. Today we're talking about um, Terumah, which is the offerings to build the temple, and then it's also the artifacts being built in the temple. So it's really, really interesting. And then we go into Shlomo's temple a bit and how he built the temple and how he um, recruited people to help him, which is really interesting. So that's what we're doing today. So the 19th reading from the Torah is called Terumah in Exodus 25:2. The Lord Yehovah commanded Moshe to tell the sons of Israel to take a contribution for me. The word translated as contribution is terumah, and it is the name of this Torah portion. Terumah is a word with no real English equivalent. In the Torah, terumah refers to a certain type of offering dedicated to the temple, a tithe or first fruits offering. In Exodus 25, the contribution is for the building of the holy place. The Torah reading is occupied with the instructions for the building of the tabernacle and its furnishings. So this is one of those portions where we go into a lot of this really strange detail on the different objects in the tabernacle, which I find fascinating because I think they're highly symbolic of how he builds us as a tabernacle. I think they are very profound, but you can write all sorts of commentary on these types of things, but they're all just hearsay. Like they're just our thoughts and, what we think about these different things. So yes, let's get into it. We're going to start with some prayer though. Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us all together today. Thank you for blessing us and keeping us. Thank you for giving us discernment on your word and give us discernment on the messages that different prophets that are coming in your name are putting out there in the world. Father, I just pray that you give us discernments to know who is hearing you and who is just hearing from unclean spirits. Just give us absolute discernment on this, Father. And I just pray, Father, that you guide us to understand your word deeper, guide us to draw near to you, to know Yeshua, your son. I pray that you continually teach us through your word and just reveal the hidden things that are there for us. I just pray over these people that they are healthy. I pray that every illness is healed in Yeshua's name. I pray, Father, that you bring these people peace where they have not found peace before, joy where they had not found joy before. I pray, Father, any hardships that have been placed on them that are not supposed to be there, that you remove in Yeshua's name. I pray, Father, that you remove all anxiety, depression, remove lust from the people, Father. And I just pray, Father, that you just rebuke those things off of them. Give them new understanding and new insights into why they are continually experiencing these hardships and help them to navigate your word, to know how to get free from those things. I pray that you make each and every one on this podcast, on this broadcast today, an overcomer in your word, that they will seek you fully and seek your word and remember their testimony of Yeshua, of meeting Yeshua, of having that salvation experience, so that they do not forget and they do not lose their lampstand. In Yeshua's mighty name we pray. Amen. All right. Let's pin. Okay, we're at Exodus 25 to begin.
The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the people of Israel, that they take for me a contribution. From every man whose heart moves him, you shall receive the contribution from me. And this is the contribution that you shall receive from them: gold, silver, and bronze, blue and purple and scarlet yarns, and fine twined linen, goat's hair, tanned ram skins, goat skins, acacia wood, oil for the lamps, spices for the anointing oil and for the fragrant incense, onyx stones, and stones for setting, for the ephod and for the breastpiece. And let them make me a sanctuary, that I may dwell in their midst, exactly as I show you concerning the pattern of the tabernacle and of all its furniture, so you shall make it. They shall make an ark of acacia wood. 2 cubits and a half shall be its length, 1 cubit and a half its breadth, and 1 cubit and a half its height. You shall overlay it with pure gold. Inside and outside shall you overlay it, and you shall make on it a molding of gold around it. You shall cast 4 rings of gold for it, and put them on its 4 feet, 2 rings on the one side of it, and 2 rings on the other side of it. You shall make poles of acacia wood, and overlay them with gold. And you shall put the poles into the rings on the sides of the ark, to carry the ark by them. The poles shall remain in the rings of the ark, they shall not be taken from it. And you shall put into the ark the testimony that I shall give you. You shall make a mercy seat of pure gold. 2 cubits and a half shall be its length, and 1 cubit and a half its breadth. And you shall make 2 cherubim of gold, of hammered work shall you make them, on the 2 ends of the mercy seat. Make 1 cherub on the one end, and 1 cherub on the other end. Of one piece with the mercy seat shall you make the cherubim on its 2 ends. The cherubim shall spread out their wings above, overshadowing the mercy seat with their wings, their faces one to another. Toward the mercy seat shall the faces of the cherubim be. And you shall put the mercy seat on the top of the ark, and in the ark you shall put the testimony that I shall give you. There I will meet with you, and from above the mercy seat, from between the 2 cherubim that are on the ark of the testimony, I will speak with you about all that I will give you in commandment for the people of Israel.
Okay, so talking about the ark, very interesting. We all love to talk about the ark because it's fascinating stuff, right? Somebody had mentioned to me this week, it was in one of the comments, and I forgot to look it up, that there is some sort of cherubim thing in the Vatican that the Pope sits between. I have to Google this right now because I just remembered this. I don't know if it'll come up. It did. Oh, it's on Facebook. Why does it make you log in to see a photo? Oh yeah, it's pretty easy to find. Okay, so just Google it. You guys. The Antichrist has been here for a while. Just saying. Okay. Pope. Cherubim. Oh, it's so creepy. Cherubim. Sitting on a throne, changing the commandments of God. Come on now. It's crazy. All right, so let's reread that so we don't stutter and we get it. Let's reread it. You shall make a mercy seat of pure gold. So mercy seat is not actually mercy seat in Hebrew. It's atonement seat. It's a seat of atonement. Mercy is a really strange translation. 2 cubits and a half shall be its length. 1 cubit and a half shall be its breadth. And you shall make 2 cherubim of gold, hammered works, that you shall make them on 2 sides, 2 ends of the mercy seat. Make 1 cherub on one side and 1 cherub on the other. 1 piece of the mercy seat you shall make the cherubim on its 2 ends, and the cherubim shall spread out their wings above, overshadowing the mercy seat with their wings. Their faces one to another toward the mercy seat. They shall the faces of the cherubim be. So these aren't. I don't think the Pope ones are facing each other. So creepy. I can barely look at them. So this angel thing, okay, remember a couple weeks ago I told you guys about those angels that showed up in front of, there was these angel statues that showed up around Xmas time, and one showed up in my neighborhood in front of somebody's house. They must have been on sale at Costco or something. Another one showed up on a church doorstep that I drove by, and I saw the same exact thing. It looked exactly like this. It looked exactly like the one in the Vatican. It was like almost exact same image, that whole, like the way they hold their hands and everything. And you shall put the mercy seat on top of the ark, and then the ark you shall put the testimony that I shall give you. So his testimony is in the ark. So what is his testimony? That is his commandments and his instructions, his 10 commandments, right? So the 10 words that were engraved on the stone get put in the ark, okay? So what is the Vatican doing? They're sitting on top of a throne. And what does the Pope do? Acts as though he were God and changes the commandments, changes the times and seasons, all of that stuff, right? There I will meet with you from above the atonement seat, from between the two cherubim that are on the ark of the testimony. I will speak with you about all that I will give you in commandment for the people of Israel. So from that place, he defines his commandments. He tells us what the commandments are. Okay, so look up the Catholic 10 commandments versus the Bible. It'll come up real easy. So you're looking, okay, so let's go through and see how this person who's sitting on the fake throne between fake cherubim, the whole thing is changing the commandments, right? So the biblical 10 commandments are: you shall have no other Elohim before me, no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an idol, so don't make carved images. You shall not use the name of Jehovah, your Elohim, in vain. Remember the Sabbath day, keep it holy. Honor your father and mother. Don't murder, commit adultery, do not commit adultery, do not steal. You shall not give a false testimony against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. Now, those are what are in the scripture. Now, if we go to the Catholic 10 commandments, we have, I hate even reading them. You shall not have strange gods before me. You shall not take the name of the Lord in vain, your God in vain. Remember to keep holy the Lord's day. So that's a change, right? They've crossed out the don't make yourself an idol one. They've just removed that. Do not make yourself an idol one. Honor your father and mother. You shall not kill. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife. You shall not covet your neighbor's good. So they, instead of you shall not covet your neighbor's house, so anything belonging to your neighbor, they split that into two so that they still have 10 commandments, and they were able to remove the idol one so they can go ahead and make their idols. And then they changed the Sabbath day one. So there you go. Antichrist has been on a throne for a while now. So anything to do with that Antichrist image, Sunday worship, Roman feasts and festivals that are all instituted by Rome. So that's your Good Friday to your Easter Sunday, and your Easter Monday, which falls on April Fools this year, guys. And then your Xmas ceremonies, your Xmas week of false Sukkot. That is the stuff you want to run from, because that is Antichrist Rome stuff. He's sitting on the throne, changing the commands of God. False throne, changing the commands of God. But if you're here with me, you probably already know that. But I'm just putting it out there for anyone who might be passing by and listening. Okay, the other thing I wanted to look at was Hosea 14. Let's go to Hosea 14, because a lot of times people are confused about like Torah keepers or people who keep the commandments of Yah, because they think that you have to go do offerings. That's the point, right? That you have to go to the temple, do offerings. And if you can't go to the temple and do offerings, then you're not keeping the Torah anyways. If you go to, obviously, if we don't have a temple and that system is not in place, we're not doing offerings, obviously. But if you go to Hosea 14, it tells you how you make your offerings, right? Hosea 14. Let's just read the whole thing because it's all really, really good, obviously. Return, O Israel, to Jehovah your Elohim, for you have stumbled because of your iniquity, perverse thinking. Take your words and return to Jehovah and say to him, take away all my iniquity, accept what is good. We will pay and we will pay with bulls the vows of our lips. So they're paying with the vows of their lips. Assyria will not save us. Assyria is where you get all that false worship stuff out of too. We will not ride on horses. We will say no more, our God, to the work of our hands. Okay, this is important. In you, the orphan finds mercy. We will say no more, our Elohim, to the work of our hands. So anytime you have some sort of carved out image, like carving out the 10 commandments and removing a couple of them and splitting and adding a couple of them, or changing the Sabbath day, you've decided that even though throughout scripture the Sabbath day is one thing and it's been displayed one way, and there's no verse in the New Testament that says we're changing the Sabbath day, but if you have created some sort of theology that changes the Sabbath day, you have carved out a work of your own hands. You have carved out an image of God that is not the image that's in scripture. It's a work of your own hands, and you are worshiping the work of your own hands. So if you are going to the Catholic Church and you're saying, oh, okay, so they can tell us about our new feasts and festivals, they can tell us about our new Sabbath day, they can change all of these things. You are worshiping the work of men. You are not worshiping God. You're worshiping the work of men, a carved image. You are worshiping a carved image. All of those things are images that men had carved out, okay? Hosea 14:4, I will heal their apostasy. So what is apostasy? Worshiping the work of men, worshiping the work of human hands. I will love them freely, for my anger has turned from them like dew, and I will be like dew to Israel, and he shall blossom like the lily, and he shall take the root. He shall take the root like the trees of Lebanon. His shoots shall spread out. His beauty shall be like the olive, his fragrance like Lebanon. And they shall return and dwell beneath my shadow. And they shall flourish like the grain, and they shall blossom like the vine. And their fame shall be like the wine of Lebanon. Oh, Ephraim, what have I to do with idols? So what does the Catholic Church do? They removed the do not make an idol commandment. They cross it out and removed it from the 10 commandments, okay? Oh, Ephraim, what have I to do with idols? It is I who answer and look after you. I am like an evergreen cypress, and from me comes your fruit. So he's the evergreen cypress. He's the tree of wisdom, right? Don't erect false trees. Don't erect false things and put false fruit on them. He is the wisdom. From him comes your fruit. Whoever is wise, let him understand these things. Whoever is discerning, let him know them. The ways of Jehovah are right, and the upright walk in them, but transgressors stumble in them. Okay? Clear as mud? You read this stuff enough times that it's like just so obvious that it's like people just need to read the Bible more and they will not be confused. Okay. So his testimony is in the ark. So if you're changing his testimony and you're changing what's in the ark, you're in a false covenant, because the false covenant has to do with his testimony, right? So you want to be careful to come out of her, my people. We're at the showbread, table for bread. So Exodus 25:23. Exodus 25:23.
You shall make a table of acacia wood. 2 cubits shall be its length, a cubit its breadth, and a cubit and a half its height. You shall overlay it with pure gold and make a molding of gold around it. And you shall make a rim around it, a handbreadth wide, and a molding of gold around the rim. And you shall make for it 4 rings of gold, and fasten the rings to the 4 corners at its 4 legs. Close to the frame the rings shall lie as holders for the poles to carry the table. You shall make the poles of acacia wood, and overlay them with gold, and the table shall be carried with these. And you shall make its plates and dishes for incense, and its flagons and bowls with which to pour drink offerings. You shall make them of pure gold. And you shall set the bread of the presence on the table before me regularly. You shall make a lampstand of pure gold. The lampstand shall be made of hammered work. Its base, its stem, its cups, its calices, and its flowers shall be of one piece with it. And there shall be 6 branches going out of its sides, 3 branches of the lampstand out of one side of it, and 3 branches of the lampstand out of the other side of it. 3 cups made like almond blossoms, each with calyx and flower, on one branch, and 3 cups made like almond blossoms, each with calyx and flower, on the other branch. So for the 6 branches going out of the lampstand. And on the lampstand itself there shall be 4 cups made like almond blossoms, with their calices and flowers, and a calyx of one piece with it under each pair of the 6 branches going out from the lampstand. Their calices and their branches shall be of one piece with it, the whole of it a single piece of hammered work of pure gold. You shall make 7 lamps for it, and the lamps shall be set up so as to give light on the space in front of it. Its tongs and their trays shall be of pure gold. It shall be made with all these utensils out of a talent of pure gold. And see that you make them after the pattern for them, which is being shown you on the mountain.
Okay, I find the lampstand so interesting. So the showbread, the table of showbread, there's 12 loaves that are put on the table of showbread. Some people think that that represents the 12 tribes, or that number of 12 is the number of government. So the number of government and order. The number 13, just if you ever see anything, 13 has come up a lot this week with the Super Bowl stuff. It's apparently Taylor Swift's favorite number. It's apparently the number 13 was all over the Super Bowl, you guys. What is interesting about the number 13? The number 13 is about lawlessness, and it's about rebellion. So that's what the number 13 is all about, which is really, really interesting because you do have this false gospel narrative that's really going out, especially with the ads in the Super Bowl and stuff. It's real false, like anything goes gospel, which I think will take hold after in a big way. So a lot of people are like, oh, there's this revival coming. There's this revival coming. I think it's a false revival personally, because it's going to be based on Roman things, the Roman covenant, right? So we just went through like the deception of the Roman covenant and how subtle it is. There's so many people. There's people that I've talked to for months and months about Rome, trying to show them like the problems with Rome, and they still can't see it. They're so trapped in that Roman covenant that they don't see. It's like they get blinded by it, right? So I think it's actually going to be a false covenant that goes out, and a false depiction of who Yah is. And it's going to sound really good, and it's going to look really good. And that's what a lot of us struggle with, is like, it sounds really good and it looks really good, but you know that Lucifer disguises himself as a angel of light, right? So it's going to look and sound really good, but there's going to be, that's why you have to know what the scriptures say. Because if a prophet, like Deuteronomy 13 says to you, if a prophet ever comes to you and says, do this commandment, go away with this commandment, you can discount that prophet instantly. Just don't listen to them. Just be like, nope, not listening to you. Because you cannot trust them. If they're not submitted to the word of God, you cannot trust the words that are coming out of their mouth. Okay. If they don't honor the Sabbath, if they say the Sabbath can be changed to Sunday, if they say you can change the holidays, do not listen to that prophet. Yes, they might be an immature believer that just hasn't got matured yet. That's fine. They shouldn't be prophesying to you. They shouldn't be prophesying in general if they're an immature believer, but don't listen to them, just because you're going to hear so many random messages, and it's just going to cause confusion. And that's what these things do. They cause confusion. They cause a spirit of confusion, and they give people fear. They give people anxiety, and times anxiety, all this stuff. So any prophet that comes to you that's saying, just don't worry about the commands of God, don't keep his commandments, just set them aside. You don't need to listen to them. Okay, let's go through the lampstand, because the lampstand is so cool. And I have so much to say on the lampstand. You guys know, if you've been with me for a while, that I have a lot to say on this on the lampstand, but I need my Passover book. Okay, we're gonna go. Okay, so you'll notice in the lampstand verses that there's a lot of sevens. 7 is the number of completion. 7 is the number of being complete, right? That's why we have 7 days in a week. That's when a week is completed. There's all these stories about, I think it was France that went to change to an 8-day week or a 9-day week, and it really messed with people. And the people were like, they were so thrown off by trying to change the length of the week that it like actually messed with them. They did studies on it. It was really, really interesting. Okay, so the lampstand is a picture of the church. Okay, what lights up the temple? Who has the light, right? And so we know this by the book of Revelation, because we have each church has lampstands, right? And so the church of Ephesus is in danger of getting their lampstand removed. They're actually in danger of losing their salvation, because they are forgetting their first love, right? They're forgetting the door in which they entered the covenant with, which is Yeshua. Okay, so they're the church, even though they got a lot of stuff right, they're the church that's actually in danger of having their lampstand removed. That's their light, right? So if you look at the lampstand, it has 7 branches. There's 7 days of the week. There's 7 biblical feasts. There's 7 churches in the book of Revelation. There's 7 colors in a rainbow. Now, when you break a rainbow apart and you refract it through a prism, this is like your, what's that band? Anyways, if you take pure light, pure, unfiltered light, and you take that pure white light and you refract it through a prism, you get 7 colors. That's what a rainbow is, 7 colors, okay? That's the complete understanding, the complete facets of having pure light, okay? And so you need all 7 of those facets of pure light to tabernacle with Yah. Most of the church has kind of gotten to the first 4, but they missed the last 3. Most of the church kind of gets Passover. They kind of understand the first 4 feasts. They get to Pentecost. But the last 3 feasts are the tabernacle feasts. And that's when we have that understanding that he's going to pour out on the Feast of Trumpets, and that where we're going to tabernacle with him eventually. The last feast is the Sukkot feast, which is a wedding feast, right? That's when you're joined, wedding. You're joined together with your husband, right? And you become one flesh, right? Okay, so Jehovah said he will not cleanse the earth by flood again. Then Jehovah said to Noah and his sons with him, I will now establish my covenant with you and your descendants, and after you, and every living creature that was with you, the birds and the livestock and all the wild animals, and those that came out of the ark with you, every living creature on the earth. I will establish my covenant with you. Never again will all life be destroyed by water of a flood. Never again will there be a flood that destroys all the earth. And Jehovah said, this is the sign of the covenant that I'm making between you and every little living creature of the covenant for all generations to come. I have set my rainbow in the clouds, and it will be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. Whenever I bring clouds in the earth and the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will remember my covenant between me and you and all living creatures of all kinds. Never again will the waters become a flood and destroy all life. Whenever the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between Yehovah and all living creatures of every kind on the earth. So if you break down the 7 spirits of Yehovah found in Isaiah 11:1, you can line them up. They line up with the feast days and they line up with the churches in the book of Revelation. So this time, instead of cleansing the earth with water, he's going to cleanse it with fire. Okay. 2 Peter 3:30. First of all, understand that in the last days, scoffers will come scoffing, following after their own desires, saying, where is the promise of his coming? Ever since the fathers died, everything goes on just as it has from the beginning of creation. In holding this idea, it escapes their notice that the heavens existed long before the earth was formed out of the water, through the water by the word of Yehovah. Through these, the world of that time was destroyed by being flooded with water. But at the same time, the world with the present heavens and earth is now being reserved for fire, kept until the day of judgment and the destruction of godly people. So he's not going to do the water this time. When the day of judgment comes, it will be done with fire. Now, in the lampstand, what do we have? Fire. So if you are in covenant, his fire, his light is growing within you, right? And so you're having that fire grow within you, right? Just like we received on Pentecost, right? Tongues of fire. So what's really interesting too is, I don't know if you can see just want to show you this. To show you. Okay, so if you want this book, this is my feast planner, but don't download it yet. Give me a couple days because I'm updating a bunch of stuff in it. So this is pure light, goes through the prism, 7 colors, okay? 7 colors of the rainbow, right? If we go back, we have the 7 spirits, the 7 facets, the 7 understandings of Yehovah, okay? This is his full measure of his spirit. Yeshua had all of these, right? Yeshua understood all of this. He had all this, okay? That's Isaiah 11. So what's interesting is if you look at fire, so if you look into fire and all that, I don't know how to move this. Okay. If you look into different flames of fire, so when you start here, this is a lower temperature of burning. And as the temperature increases, the fire gets hotter. Ignore the green though. And then from here to here, the fire gets even hotter, okay? And so if you understand that with looking at the feasts, how this group that stays down here would kind of be lukewarm, if you know what I'm saying, right? But those who understand and go the full measure and get all the 7 spirits and all the 7 understanding, they really press oil into their lamp, they get hotter, right? Now this green is not actually due to the temperature of the flame. It's actually due to sulfur being burned out. So green happens when you burn sulfur, and it doesn't have to do with the temperature. So as sulfur impurity, and then when you look at brimstone, okay, so this is the word for brimstone, Strong's 1614. Gulfrith, probably it's a derivative of 1613. It's properly cypress resin. So resin from the cypress tree, which I find fascinating, and it's sulfur. So you can look up that word as well. So here, if you want to just take a quick screenshot, here is some verses on brimstone, okay? You can just save those for later if you want to look at that just for time today. But so I want to talk about this part of it, okay? So the middle candle is the shamash, shamash, I think is how you say it, candle. So this candle is what the priests light, and then they would take this candle and light the rest of the candles. So it's like this candle comes down from heaven. This is the candle that represents the Feast of Pentecost and the Sabbath, and it comes down from heaven and it lights up the rest of the candles. Okay, so now you can kind of look at Passover. This is like, your first entry into the kingdom. Unleavened bread, that's the next understanding. First fruits, then Sabbath and Pentecost are together on this one, and then trumpets, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, right? And Sukkot is the hottest of the flames, right? Because you have to tabernacle with Jehovah at this point, right? This is Tabernacle's feast, and you can't tabernacle with him if you're not ready, right? That's why he says to Laodicea, I want you to buy from me gold refined by fire, right? What's this made out of? Gold, fire, gold refined by fire. Okay. We'll just looking at the 7 feasts. Okay, so we got 7 spirits of Jehovah, 7 colors of the rainbow, 7 feasts of Jehovah, 7 churches holding lampstands. Okay, so just to go through quickly the wise maidens. So there's 10. 10 means a full congregation. So that's the whole body. Okay, 10 is the full congregation of the people. So half of the body, half of the congregation of the full body of Yeshua is potentially unwise maidens that are not ready, where the other half are ready. Okay. I find that interesting. That's just my thought on it, but I found that really, really interesting to think about. Okay. The lamp is the word of Jehovah. See Psalm 119. The oil means to make full and fat, to anoint, to cause burning. Okay. Let's look at the Hebrew word for oil. Shemen, grease, especially liquid from the olive tree. That's going to come in later. Richness, anointing, fruitful, anoint. So it's like this fruitfulness. Okay. So going back to the Isaiah 1 thing. So here you have the 7 spirits of Jehovah, Isaiah 11. Okay. Each feast helps you understand. Okay, so let's just look at one example. This is the church of Sardis. Okay, so we got Ephesus, Smyrna, Thyatira, I think, Pergamum, Sardis, Philadelphia, Laodicea. Okay, Laodicea doesn't have fear and reverence for Jehovah. So what happens to Laodicea? Spit out into tribulation, right? Philadelphia has power. They're given the keys to the kingdom. They have little power left because they're got tired, but this is the royal priesthood position. Okay, this is Yom Kippur. Okay, understanding this is Sardis. So what does Sardis need to do? They need to wake up. They're connected to the Feast of Trumpets. Sardis needs to wake up, and if they don't wake up, right, and get ready, what happens, right? And so each of these, and I go through this in the book if you want to look at the book later, each of these is connected to one of the feasts. Okay, and so as you understand each of these things, you're developing this spirit in you. This is unleavened bread. Okay, so let's look at, so unleavened bread is the process of removing the leaven from your home, right? You remove all the leaven, right? Which is false teachings, all that false stuff, right? You're moving that from your home. So that's the Feast of Unleavened Bread. You're taking counsel, you're learning about taking counsel from Jehovah to only partake in his unleavened sacrifice, which is Yeshua, okay? And so during this Feast of Unleavened Bread, you are having communion with Yeshua, and you're remembering, and you're taking counsel, and you're taking an account of your home and making sure that you don't have anything in your home that is not of him, right? And that's what this is all about, taking counsel, okay? And so that's just one example of how learning the scriptures and learning the actual scriptures instead of Roman things teaches you about Yeshua, teaches you about the whole plan of salvation. What does Yeshua mean? Yah's plan of salvation. Yeshua means Yah's salvation, right? So as you learn about the actual scriptures, the actual image that Jehovah gave you, You are learning about Yeshua, his plan of salvation, Yah's salvation. You're learning about Yeshua. How is he going to walk us through this process so we can tabernacle with him? How's he going to get us here? We're pressing oil. This is pressing oil, doing the different feasts and understanding and pressing, coming here on the Sabbath and talking about this stuff is pressing oil into your lamp so that you can just have discernment and have that reverence of him so that you can tabernacle with him, right? I think that's all I wanted to talk about with that, with the lampstand. Let's get back to the Torah portion. Again, don't purchase the book today or like download the book today if you want it, because it's Sabbath, number one, and number two, because I've added a bunch of stuff to it, so I haven't re-uploaded it yet. So if you have a copy from last year, you just have to find the link in your email and re-download it, but don't do it till like Wednesday, because I updated a whole bunch of stuff in there. Okay, so that's the golden lampstand. That's like just part. I mean, there's people that have, you know, different understandings of the almond blossoms and the different images on it and what they're all about. He hasn't taught me that yet, so I'm not going to stress about it. Let's move on to the tabernacle. I think it would be good. Oh wait, there's something I want to tell you guys. Yeah, let's look at Zechariah 4, because Zechariah 4 talks about the two lampstands and the oil pouring in to the two lampstands, which is connected to the two witnesses, right? So Zechariah 4, 1 to 14. Let's just read it first. Zechariah 4:1. And the angel who talked with me came again and woke me like a man who's awakened out of his sleep. And he said to me, "What do you see?" And I said, "I see, behold, a lampstand of all gold with a bowl on the top of it, and seven lamps on it, and with the seven lips on each of the lamps that are on top of it. And there are two olive trees. There are two olive trees, one on the right side of the bowl and one on the left side of the bowl." I said to the angel who talked to me, "What are these, my Lord?" Then the angel who talked to me, Lord is small l, meaning master. Then the angel who talked to me with me answered and said to me, "Do you not know what these are?" I said, "No, my Lord," small l, master. And he said to me, "This is the word of the Lord, capital L's, Yod He Vav He, to Zerubbabel, not by might nor by power, but by my spirit, says Jehovah of hosts. Who are you, O great mountain, before Zerubbabel, that you shall become a plain, and he shall bring forward the top stone amidst shouts of grace, grace to it." So his spirit, we talked about the seven things of his spirit, right? So the seven facets of his spirit. So not by might, not by power, but by his spirit, by his anointing, says Jehovah of hosts, that he will do it. And this is where he will crush all the mountains. Let's look at, so if you look, okay, so I want to just point out where you also see this imagery. Paul, when he talks about the cultivated and the wild olive trees, Romans 11, 17, 24. 17 to 24. So there's the cultivated olive tree, and then there's the wild olive tree that's grafted in, right? The two witnesses and the two lampstands are at Revelation 11, 3 and 4. The tree of life is at Genesis 2, 9 and Revelation 22, 2. The two pillars is 1 Kings 7, 21, 2 Chronicles 3, 17, and Revelation 3, 12. We don't have time to go through all those, but if you want to do a study on that, it's really interesting. So the picture is the witnesses pouring the oil into the lampstand and the lampstand being lit. Okay. And that would be, if you look at Ezekiel 37, it's likely Judah and Ephraim, right? The cultivated olive tree and the wild olive tree pouring in and coming together like Ezekiel 37 says they will, right? I also had this thought, what is the image of Yeshua when he showed his glorified self on the mountain, right? And he appeared with Moses and Elijah, right? So he appeared with Moses and he appeared with Elijah. Those are two prophets that testified to two very distinct, unique understandings, right? Moses prophesied to the law and to the commandments, and Elijah prophesies to the spirit, right? And so it's really interesting that Yeshua appears with them. So it's almost like you have the two understandings, right? And then Yeshua in the middle, the lampstand lit up, glowing, right? So that's just my thought on the two witnesses currently. Feel free to disagree with me. Okay, let's move back to the tabernacle, and we're at Exodus 26, 1. Yeah, I'll repeat the verses just a sec. Okay, I'll just show you what I was looking at for that. And then you can just screenshot, okay? So you can just screenshot this. So these are all the verses that you could go through, which would give you a really good Bible study. Like we could do a separate Bible study just on this if you all want. I have long thought that Judah and Ephraim are the two witnesses. I've thought that for a long time. I know people disagree with me. That's fine. But that's just my thought. You don't have to agree. Like I'm not saying thus says Jehovah. That's why I don't say thus says Jehovah, because that's a dangerous game to play, right? I just say these are my thoughts. Let's go pin this. Oh boy. Pin. Okay, so we are at verse 26, Exodus 26, 1.
Moreover, you shall make the tabernacle with 10 curtains of fine twined linen, and blue and purple and scarlet yarns. You shall make them with cherubim skillfully worked into them. The length of each curtain shall be 28 cubits, and the breadth of each curtain 4 cubits. All the curtains shall be the same size. 5 curtains shall be coupled to one another, and the other 5 curtains shall be coupled to one another. And you shall make loops of blue on the edge of the outermost curtain in the first set. Likewise, you shall make loops on the edge of the outermost curtain in the second set. 50 loops you shall make on the one curtain, and 50 loops you shall make on the edge of the curtain that is in the second set. The loops shall be opposite one another. And you shall make 50 clasps of gold, and couple the curtains one to the other with the clasps, so that the tabernacle may be a single whole. You shall also make curtains of goat's hair for a tent over the tabernacle. 11 curtains shall you make. The length of each curtain shall be 30 cubits, and the breadth of each curtain 4 cubits. The 11 curtains shall be the same size. You shall couple 5 curtains by themselves, and 6 curtains by themselves. And the 6th curtain you shall double over at the front of the tent. You shall make 50 loops on the edge of the curtain that is outermost in one set, and 50 loops on the edge of the curtain that is outermost in the second set. You shall make 50 clasps of bronze, and put the clasps into the loops, and couple the tent together, that it may be a single whole. And the part that remains of the curtains of the tent, the half curtain that remains, shall hang over the back of the tabernacle. And the extra that remains in the length of the curtains, the cubit on the one side and the cubit on the other side, shall hang over the sides of the tabernacle on this side and that side to cover it. And you shall make for the tent a covering of tanned ram skins and a covering of goat skins on top. You shall make upright frames for the tabernacle of acacia wood. 10 cubits shall be the length of a frame, and a cubit and a half the breadth of each frame. There shall be 2 tenons in each frame for fitting together. So shall you do for all the frames of the tabernacle. You shall make the frames for the tabernacle, 20 frames for the south side, and 40 bases of silver you shall make under the 20 frames, 2 bases under one frame for its 2 tenons, and 2 bases under the next frame for its 2 tenons. And for the second side of the tabernacle on the north side, 20 frames, and there 40 bases of silver, 2 bases under one frame, and 2 bases under the next frame. And for the rear of the tabernacle westward you shall make 6 frames, and you shall make 2 frames for corners of the tabernacle in the rear. They shall be separate beneath, but joined at the top at the first ring. Thus shall it be with both of them. They shall form the 2 corners, and there shall be 8 frames with their bases of silver, 16 bases, 2 bases under one frame, and 2 bases under another frame. You shall make bars of acacia wood, 5 for the frames of the one side of the tabernacle, and 5 bars for the frames of the other side of the tabernacle, and 5 bars for the frames of the side of the tabernacle at the rear westward. The middle bar halfway up the frames shall run from end to end. You shall overlay the frames with gold, and shall make their rings of gold for holders for the bars, and you shall overlay the bars with gold. Then you shall erect the tabernacle according to the plan for it that you were shown on the mountain. And you shall make a veil of blue and purple and scarlet yarns and fine twined linen. It shall be made with cherubim skillfully worked into it. And you shall hang it on 4 pillars of acacia overlaid with gold, with hooks of gold on 4 bases of silver. And you shall hang the veil from the clasps, and bring the ark of the testimony in there within the veil. And the veil shall separate for you the holy place from the most holy. You shall put the mercy seat on the ark of the testimony in the most holy place. And you shall set the table outside the veil, and the lampstand on the south side of the tabernacle opposite the table, and you shall put the table on the north side. You shall make a screen for the entrance of the tent of blue and purple and scarlet yarns, and fine twined linen, embroidered with needlework. And you shall make for the screen 5 pillars of acacia, and overlay them with gold. Their hooks shall be of gold, and you shall cast 5 bases of bronze for them.
Okay, I'm going to explain this all to you so you all fully, no, just kidding. I have no idea. I am sure that there is some sort of wonderful things hidden in here, but I do not know what they are. They have not been revealed to me. If you want to nerd out on studying the tabernacle and the temple, Rico Cortez is the guy for that. He is excellent at it. He has all sorts of diagrams and drawings and all sorts of things that he goes through. If that's your cup of tea and you want to nerd out on that, that's where you can go to really nerd out on it. He has given me no revelation on any of this other than, the Holy of Holies used to be with a curtain in front of it, right? And when Yeshua died on the cross, that curtain got torn. And so what is that an image of? That we now have access to have the testimony, his testimony, right? We talked about how the testimony is in the ark, right? The ark is this picture of our heart. Who's sitting on the throne of your heart, right? And so when that curtain is torn, we don't have to be a Levitical priest. We don't have to be this, in that sort of condition. We can freely, because we have the atonement of Yeshua, we have free access to access the Father. Okay. We should still come to the Father respectful of his commandments, respectful of who he is, right? but we have access now to him in that way, right? Let's read the curtain being torn section. I think this is really interesting because I think we get lost in the like interestingness of the tabernacle and the temple. It's like fascinating stuff, but I think we have to remember that it's an image to show us that what's going on in the heavenly realm, etc. Okay, torn. The veil is torn. Matthew 27. Let's go there. Okay, so Matthew 27, 45. 45. Now in the 6th hour, there was a darkness over the land until the 9th hour. And then in the 9th hour, so for 3 hours, and then the 9th hour, Yeshua cried out with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani. That is, my God, why have you forsaken me? And some of the bystanders hearing it said, this man is calling Elijah. And one of them at once ran and took a sponge, filled it with sour wine, and put it on a reed and gave it to him to drink. And the other says, wait, let's see whether Elijah will come to save him. And then Yeshua cried out again, and with a loud voice, he yielded up his spirit. And behold, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom, and the earth shook, and the rocks were split, and the tombs were opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. And coming out of the tombs after his resurrection, they went to the holy city and appeared to many. When the centurion and those who were with him, keeping watch over Yeshua, saw the earthquake and what had took place, they were filled with awe and said, truly, this was the Son of God. So I want to just point out too, because a lot of times people question the authenticity of the scriptures and stuff like that. This was a story that was talked about and going around. There is no people that came and stood up and said, no, this never happened. There's no documents during this time. There's no documents during this time of like writings that said, no, this didn't happen. This didn't actually happen. Nobody questioned this. They all understood that this happened. There's many, many witnesses. So when people question the gospels and stuff like that, I always think about this section here, because you had literal people raised from the dead walking around the holy city, testifying that they were rose. And there's no documents, there's no scrolls found, there's no evidence found, no scrolls that say this never happened. Because if this was just a made up story, there would be people that said, these guys are going around saying this, and they would have wrote it out, and you would have some evidence that this didn't actually happen, because people would have written something, they would have told the story, they would have engraved it somewhere. There would be some evidence that people were questioning this, but it was not questioned. There's no evidence. Nothing has come forth to say this. So that's just a really good understanding that this did happen. This happened and it took place, because nobody out there said it didn't, right? Nobody wrote a book that said it didn't happen. Okay, so he tore the veil to the Holy of Holies, meaning that through him as high priest, we now have access. And that also goes back to this understanding of that the Torah, the scriptures, are now written on your heart, right? They're not written in the ark anymore. They're written on you. They're written inside of you, right? They're not done away with. They're written in you, right? Where was I? Let's go back to the tabernacle. I have nothing more to say about that, because really I don't I have no revelation on the tabernacle. Let's go to the bronze altar. We're at 27:1. Exodus 27:1.
You shall make the altar of acacia wood, 5 cubits long and 5 cubits broad. The altar shall be square, and its height shall be 3 cubits. And you shall make horns for it on its 4 corners. Its horns shall be of one piece with it, and you shall overlay it with bronze. You shall make pots for it to receive its ashes, and shovels and basins and forks and fire pans. You shall make all its utensils of bronze. You shall also make for it a grating, a network of bronze, and on the net you shall make 4 bronze rings at its 4 corners. And you shall set it under the ledge of the altar, so that the net extends halfway down the altar. And you shall make poles for the altar, poles of acacia wood, and overlay them with bronze. And the poles shall be put through the rings, so that the poles are on the 2 sides of the altar when it is carried. You shall make it hollow with boards. As it has been shown you on the mountain, so shall it be made. You shall make the court of the tabernacle. On the south side the court shall have hangings of fine twined linen, 100 cubits long for one side. Its 20 pillars and their 20 bases shall be of bronze, but the hooks of the pillars and their fillets shall be of silver. And likewise for its length on the north side, there shall be hangings 100 cubits long, its pillars 20, and their bases 20, of bronze, but the hooks of the pillars and their fillets shall be of silver. And for the breadth of the court on the west side there shall be hangings for 50 cubits, with 10 pillars and 10 bases. The breadth of the court on the front to the east shall be 50 cubits. The hangings for the one side of the gate shall be 15 cubits, with their 3 pillars and 3 bases. On the other side the hangings shall be 15 cubits, with their 3 pillars and 3 bases. For the gate of the court there shall be a screen 20 cubits long of blue and purple and scarlet yarns, and fine twined linen, embroidered with needlework. It shall have 4 pillars, and with them 4 bases. All the pillars around the court shall be filleted with silver. Their hooks shall be of silver, and their bases of bronze. The length of the court shall be 100 cubits, the breadth 50, and the height 5 cubits, with hangings of fine twined linen, and bases of bronze. All the utensils of the tabernacle for every use, and all its pegs and all the pegs of the court, shall be of bronze.
That's it. That's the design. So apparently the design of the tabernacle matches the tabernacle that's in heaven. That many people talk about is the image that Ezekiel was given. So who knows how that works, but it is the reflection, the design from heaven. So I imagine there's a lot of really interesting stuff in there that we don't understand. And we're not going to solve today. Let's go to 1 Kings 5. We're going to talk about Shlomo's building of Shlomo's temple now. 1 Kings 5, verse 12.
And the Lord gave Solomon wisdom as he promised him. And there was peace between Hiram and Solomon, and the 2 of them made a treaty. King Solomon drafted forced labor out of all Israel, and the draft numbered 30,000 men. And he sent them to Lebanon, 10,000 a month in shifts. They would be a month in Lebanon and 2 months at home. Adoniram was in charge of the draft. Solomon also had 70,000 burden bearers and 80,000 stone cutters in the hill country, besides Solomon's 3,300 chief officers who were over the work, who had charge of the people who carried on the work. At the king's command, they quarried out great, costly stones in order to lay the foundation of the house with dressed stones. So Solomon's builders and Hiram's builders and the men of Gebal did the cutting and prepared the timber and the stone to build the house.
Okay, I have to tell you about this because it's fascinating. The rabbis have this story that Shlomo actually didn't cut the stones with metal or metal implements, that he actually used worms. I'm not even kidding. Worms. So, and this story, okay, so I'm not saying that this is true. I'm not saying that this is a thing. I'm just telling you that this story exists in the rabbis' writings of the Babylonian Talmud. Okay. And so how did Shlomo learn how to get these worms to cut the stones? According to the Babylonian Talmud, it says that he learned from a demon. A demon taught him how to cut the stones. I'm not saying that I agree with that. I'm not saying that that's true. I'm just telling you that that's what the Babylonian Talmud says. If you want to look that up and read it for yourself, it is just Google Babylonian Talmud Gittin, Gittin, 68a. And it gets into the different types of demons and all that stuff. I don't really recommend studying this kind of stuff, but I just want you to be aware that the Talmud says that Shlomo talked to demons. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I wasn't there. So if you want to look at that, again, it's Babylonian Talmud Tractate Gittin, 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 68a. And so Jewish children, Orthodox Jewish children that go by the Talmud are taught from a very young age that the stones for Solomon's temple were actually cut with worms. So the worm is called a shamir worm. Let's look at that and see if we see anything on the shamir worm. Solomon's shamir. Yeah, you could just Google Solomon's shamir. There's a wiki on it. Apparently, this worm cut the stones for the temple. Because they didn't want to use the swords on the rock. So there's this whole, because you remember back a few weeks ago when we talked about in Exodus how you're not supposed to cut a stone for the altar with a sword. So you're not supposed to hew the stone with a sword because that is violent, right? And so inappropriate use of the tools could cause war bloodshed is the thought. Okay, so Shlomo didn't want to use, apparently, according to this, he didn't want to use swords to cut the stone, so he had to use these worms. Okay, the shamir worm. I'm just telling you what it says. So yeah, if you want to do a deep dive on that, feel free. The Quran mentions it. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, you could go down some pretty crazy rabbit holes with this. I just want to let you know that that exists. There is in the Talmud, as far as I know, there's a lot of information about saying that possibly Shlomo talked to the demons and learned stuff from demons. And then there's also the implication in that Moshe did the same, which I find not cool personally. That's why I don't touch the Talmud. I don't read it other than just little bits of information just to know what it says. But yeah, I personally don't think it's something that you should be studying. I know I have friends that would disagree with you on that, would disagree with me on that, but personally, from what I've seen from it, it's not something you should study. Let's go to, oh yeah, we're going to talk about, okay, so Shlomo drafted men to build the temple. So it's almost like in that time too, there was this understanding like paying taxes was often like working for the government or working for the king is how you would pay your taxes, is you would have a set amount of time that you would go and work, which is the same today, except for we just do it in cash. But it was forced labor. Like they were drafted and forced. It was a draft. And they were sent to Lebanon, Lebanon is where all the trees were. So that's why the cedars of Lebanon, you hear cedars of Lebanon all the time. Lebanon is where you find all the cedar trees. And so they were grabbing the cedars to build the temple. Okay. And so the temple was built with that wood and acacia wood. You hear acacia wood mentioned a lot. Um, and so then he would send them away for a month to Lebanon, and then 2 months they would come back. So they go for Lebanon a month and come back. And then he had a whole bunch of stonecutters and burden bearers and all that working in the quarry to get the stone ready for the foundation of the temple. So the timber would have likely come from Lebanon. So if you look at a map, Lebanon and Canaan, where Abraham came, it's kind of like there's this green stretch up there of green, like more green land. Whereas around Israel, there was not a lot of cedars and whatnot. A little bit, but not a lot. Okay, so let's go to verse 6:1. We're at 1 Kings 6:1.
480th year after the people of Israel came out of the land of Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel, in the month of Ziv, which is the 2nd month, he began to build the house of the Lord. The house that King Solomon built for the Lord was 60 cubits long, 20 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. The vestibule in front of the nave of the house was 20 cubits long, equal to the width of the house, and 10 cubits deep in front of the house. And he made for the house windows with recessed frames. He also built a structure against the wall of the house, running around the walls of the house, both the nave and the inner sanctuary. And he made side chambers all around. The lowest story was 5 cubits broad, the middle one was 6 cubits broad, and the third was 7 cubits broad. For around the outside of the house he made offsets on the wall in order that the supporting beams should not be inserted into the walls of the house. When the house was built, it was with stone prepared at the quarry, so that neither hammer nor axe nor any tool of iron was heard in the house while it was being built. The entrance for the lowest story was on the south side of the house, and one went up by stairs to the middle story, and from the middle story to the third. So he built the house and finished it, and he made the ceiling of the house of beams and planks of cedar. He built the structure against the whole house, 5 cubits high, and it was joined to the house with timbers of cedar. Now the word of the Lord came to Solomon concerning this house that you are building. If you will walk in my statutes and obey my rules and keep all my commandments and walk in them, then I will establish my word with you, which I spoke to David your father. And I will dwell among the children of Israel and will not forsake my people Israel.
So again, repeating at the end of it, keep the commandments and the statutes, and then I will dwell with them and not forsake them. Let's go to Mark 12. Mark 12:35.
And as Jesus taught in the temple, he said, how can the scribes say that the Christ is the son of David? David himself in the Holy Spirit declared, the Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I put your enemies under your feet. David himself calls him Lord. So how is he his son? And the great throng heard him gladly. And in his teaching he said, beware of the scribes who like to walk around in long robes and like greetings in the marketplaces and have the best seats in the synagogues and the places of honor at feasts, who devour widows' houses and for a pretense make long prayers. They will receive the greater condemnation. And he sat down opposite the treasury and watched the people putting money into the offering box. Many rich people put in large sums. And a poor widow came and put in 2 small copper coins, which make a penny. And he called his disciples to him and said to them, truly I say to you, this poor widow has put in more than all those who are contributing to the offering box. For they all contributed out of their abundance, but she out of her poverty has put in everything she had, all she had to live on.
Okay, so this is connecting because we had the Moshe took the offering for building of the tabernacle, and people brought their gold. They brought an abundance of whatever they had to build the tabernacle, to build God's house, right? And then Shlomo he conscripted everyone to come and build the tabernacle. So he actually taxed them to build the tabernacle. So I don't know what the implication of that is, but what is Yeshua saying here? So Yeshua is talking about how the widow gave just her very last, all that she had to build God's house, right? To maintain God's house. She was giving her all, right? That's a really good testament of her heart position. I want to talk about this verse. Beware of the scribes. And in his teachings, he said, beware of the scribes who like to walk around in long robes and like greetings in the marketplaces, and they have the best seats in the synagogues and the places of honor at feasts, who devour widows' houses and make for pretense make long prayers. They will receive the greater condemnation. This is so apparent in the mainstream church in different angles. There's a guy I really like. He's a Christian comedian. But he was calling out this other guy this week about, let me see if I can just find it. Like I said, these things always line up with, it kind of always like the Torah portions always line up with stuff that's actually going on. So there's this mainstream Christian comedian guy, and he's been calling out this other ministry who keeps posting his new cars and his fancy stuff and all this stuff that he's been posting. Talon Michael. So this guy. Okay, so if you want to go, his name's Josh Benson. He usually just does comedy. He's had a few videos that I've like really I really agree with a lot that he has to say. So Talon Michael is like a big pastor who all of a sudden started posting about his private jets and his new car that costs like $200,000, all of this stuff. Well, this guy did the deep research and started calling him out on it. Like, what are you doing? Right. And so I just wanted to point that out because it's so apparent. Like we see it all the time. We see it with the Joel Osteens and all of these places where these people elevate themselves and they take the tithe, and instead of distributing the tithe to the widows and the orphans, they are making themselves great and important. And look at me, look at my jet, and look at my look at how the Lord has blessed me, right? But really what they're doing is they're taking the tithes and offerings. And we talked about this before. Tithes and offerings are for going to the feast, going to Sukkot. That's what you're supposed to tithe for. It's for maintaining the temple, right? So yes, you can give an offering to, your whoever you want to give an offering to. That's fine. There's no command against that. It's a good thing because you're building God's house, right? But a third of that is supposed to go straight to widows and orphans and those in need, the poor, the widow, the orphan. Okay. And so these churches that are collecting millions of dollars and not feeding the poor, the widow, the orphan, that is a big, bad thing. It's a really big, bad thing. So they're going to receive the greater condemnation. That's like really scary, really scary. So anyways, his that account is Josh Benson. If you want to go look at what he's been doing to call this guy out, pretty good stuff. I think that's all we're going to talk about today. People always ask me too, like, should you give offerings? Yes, you should. If you have it placed on your heart to support somebody who is doing the work of the kingdom, absolutely you should. But you should also be giving to the widows and the orphans, and you should also be making sure that you have saved up money so that you can do the Feast of Sukkot, and you can do the Feast of Passover, right? Because the Feast of Sukkot is an 8-day feast. So we should all be saving up to go do that feast. Ideally, you would go to Israel, but not everyone can do that. That's understood. We cannot do that. But definitely, like when you're thinking about tithes and offerings, definitely break it up into the 3. So supporting ministries you like, great, do that for sure. Then widows and orphans, right? Make sure you're doing that in some, or even maybe you support a ministry that supports widows and orphans. Great. And then saving up to do the Feast of Sukkot. So to make sure that you have what you need to go do Sukkot, however you're going to do it, right? That would be the 3 areas that you would want to think about financially to start to sort that out. I think that's all I have to say about that, really. I think too, like looking for something in your community where you could support the poor, the widow, and orphan, because as you lift up your community will become stronger. So instead of sending it far away, look first to support your community. And because that will improve the spiritual atmosphere of your entire community, right? And if you do that first at home and then, wherever else he's called you, I mean, maybe he's called you to do something else, but I was thinking about that this week, how we should look for places in our own communities to lift people up, right? And even within like the people who come together on this, who come together on this call every week, or people that in your online fellowships, look for the poor, the widow, and the orphan within your online fellowships, and those who are actually trying to lift up those who are actually trying to walk in the commandments of God is really a good thing. Because if you lift up the poor, the widow, orphan that are walking in God's commandments, they're going to be able to go, and then they will bless in return, and they will be able to spread and grow the kingdom, right? So it's all about growing the kingdom, right? If you lift up the poor and the widow and the orphan, then they're going to be able to help others in the future, and so on and so on. You can never go wrong with just being charitable to the poor, the widow, and the orphan. That's my takeaway from all scripture, is like, if you're confused and you're not sure what to do, just go feed somebody who's hungry. Just do that and you're good, right? That's my number one. Like, people get so wrapped up in rapture and tribulation and end times. It's like, if you are so focused and confused and feeling like you're not ready, just stop everything, take the last of your money and go feed a hungry person, and you've done a good thing. You're good, rather than get wrapped up in all the different end times dogma, right? Because you could really hurt your brain doing that. I wanted to go back because I kind of missed talking about, I don't know if Will is coming on today. I messaged Will this morning. I don't know if he's coming on to do the Romans thing, but I wanted to talk to you guys about the ark and how in Jeremiah it talks about the ark, and then in the book of 2nd Maccabees it talks about the ark. So I just want to point these 2 things out today, because we did talk about the ark today. Let me see if I can find it. So first, let's go to Jeremiah. I forgot it. First Samuel. Jeremiah 3:15. Jeremiah 3:15, and I will give you shepherds after my own heart, who will feed you with knowledge and understanding. Remember on the menorah, the knowledge and understanding? This is cool. You guys, this is cool. Okay, let's go back to the menorah. I will give you shepherds after my own heart, who will feed you with knowledge and understanding. We got to go back to the menorah. Understanding, knowledge, and understanding. So knowledge is Passover. Understanding is trumpets. So they'll feed you with knowledge, the testimony of Yeshua, and understanding the commandments of Yehovah. That's so cool. Knowledge and understanding always lines up. The word is so perfect. That's why people question the word. I'm like, no, there's all this little stuff that you don't notice until you notice it. And when you've been multiplied, so those are the 2 introductory feasts, right? The first feast is Passover. That's your knowledge of who Yehovah is. That's your salvation, your knowledge, right? And then that other understanding is connected with the Feast of Trumpets. Feast of Trumpets is waking up Sardis, whose works are not complete. right? So the Feast of Trumpets is they have the testimony of Yeshua, but they don't have the commandments of Yah, right? They're not ready to tabernacle with him. So I will give you shepherds after my own heart who will feed you with knowledge, testimony of Yeshua, understanding, trumpets, wake up, keep the commands of Yah, knowledge and understanding. And when you've multiplied and been fruitful in the land in those days, declares Jehovah, they shall no more say the ark of the covenant of Jehovah. It will not come to mind or be remembered or missed, and it shall not be made again. At that time, Jerusalem shall be called the throne of Jehovah, and all the nations shall gather to it in the presence of Jehovah in Jerusalem. They shall no more stubbornly follow after their own evil heart. In those days, the house of Judah shall join with the house of Israel. We talked about this, the two olive branches, right? Will join. Israel was the ones that were divorced. Ephraim and Israel is interchangeable a lot in scripture. So Israel was divorced. Judah was not divorced. Judah is the cultivated olive tree. Israel and Ephraim are the wild branches, and then the wild branches grafted back in, right? Because Israel was divorced from Jehovah because of their disobedience to his commandments. And together they shall come from a land from the north, a land that you gave your fathers for a heritage. So Jerusalem will be the throne. It won't be the Ark of the Covenant anymore. It'll be Jerusalem. Now, when you look at Philadelphia in Revelation 3, it talks about New Jerusalem, right? Revelation 3, go to the Church of Philadelphia. And to the angel of the Church of Philadelphia write, the words of the Holy One and the True One, who has the key of David, who opens, no one will shut, and shut, no one will open. Behold, I know your works, that I've set before you an open door, keys, because he has the keys to the kingdom, set before you an open door that no one is able to shut. I know that you have little power, but yet you have kept my word, commandments, and not denied my name. Yeshua, faith in Yeshua, testimony of Yeshua. Behold, I will make those of the synagogue of Satan who say they are Jews but are not, but lie. Behold, I will make them come down and bow before your feet, and they will learn that I have loved you. Because you have kept my word about patient endurance, I will keep you from the hour of trial that is coming upon the whole world and those who dwell on the earth. I am coming soon. Hold fast to what you have, that no one may seize your crown. The one who conquers, I will make him a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall never go out of it. I will write on him the name of my God and the name of the city of my God, the New Jerusalem, which comes down from my God out of heaven with my own new name. He who has ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. So New Jerusalem is connected to that Church of Philadelphia somehow. The name of the new city is written on them. And then in Jeremiah, it talks about how that's where his throne is going to be. It's not going to be the Ark of the Covenant anymore, because the covenant's on our heart. And then the New Jerusalem is written on Philadelphia. So do I understand that completely? No, but I just want to point those things out to you so that you can think about them and ponder them. I was also going to read Maccabees because I want to talk about how it talks about in Maccabees the ark. Jeremiah, there's this verse too where he hides the ark in a cave. Or is that Maccabees? So Second Maccabees, one finds in the records that Jeremiah the prophet ordered those who had been deported to take some of the fire as it had been told. And the prophet, after giving them the law, instructed that those who were being deported not forget the commandments of Jehovah, nor to be led astray in their thoughts upon seeing gold and silver statues and their adornments. With other similar words, he exhorted them that the law should not depart from their hearts. It is also in the writing of the prophet, having received an oracle, ordering that the tent and the ark should follow with him. And he went to the mountain where Moses had gone up and had seen the inheritance of Jehovah. And Jeremiah came and found a cave, and he brought there the tent and the ark and the altar of incense, and he sealed up the entrance. And some of those who had followed him came up to mark the way, but could not find it. And when Jeremiah learned of it, he rebuked them and declared, This place shall be unknown until Jehovah gathers his people together and shows his mercy. When Jeremiah learned of it, and then the Lord Jehovah will disclose these things, and the glory of Jehovah and the cloud will appear as they are shown in the case of Moses. And Solomon asked, as Solomon asked that the place should be specifically or specially consecrated. So Jeremiah hid, according to Second Maccabees, Jeremiah hid the ark in some cave somewhere that is where Mount Sinai is, which is where Moses had gone up and seen the inheritance. No, that's Mount Nebo. So Jeremiah had taken the ark and hid it where Moses had gone up and seen the inheritance of God. That is Mount Nebo. Okay, Mount Nebo. And so Jeremiah came and found a cave, which he brought the tent, and they put the ark and the altar of incense in there, and he sealed up the entrance. So if Second Maccabees is reliable, then the ark is in a cave somewhere, sealed up. So why do they keep saying that it's in Jerusalem if it's where Moses had gone up and seen the inheritance? That would be Mount Nebo, not, where's Mount Nebo? Mount Nebo is like far from Jerusalem. Elevated ridge located in Jordan. So Mount Nebo's in Jordan. So that would, if this is correct, then the ark is in Jordan. The Ark of the Covenant is in Jordan. There's also a Mount Nebo in America, by the way, in Arkansas. Anyways, that's just for interest's sake. If you want to go on an ark quest, start looking around Mount Nebos of various kinds. But you're not going to find it because he's not going to reveal it until the time is come to reveal it. I think it'll be revealed as part of the end times testimony at some point, where people will have a choice. They like need to understand that either they're keeping the commandments of God that were written by the finger of God, or they're keeping Rome's commandments, right? And so there'll be that choice to make. And that will be the dividing factor, right? So I think that that wherever the ark is, and I know there's lots of theories on where it is. Ron Wyatt has like a whole thing on it. But if the ark, if Maccabees is saying that the ark is buried at Mount Nebo, then what Ron Wyatt's saying doesn't really add up. So who knows? It's just fun to think about. I find, maybe it's because I grew up on Indiana Jones, but I find this stuff like interesting to think about and like dig into. Okay, I'm gonna stop the recording, and if there's anything you guys want to talk about, feel free.